Hello friends, I am Jaideep Sharma from Indira Gandhi National Open University, Faculty of Library and Information Science. So today we will be having a discussion on research, and this particular session is devoted to planning your research. Planning is very important in research. Therefore, we thought we can have a full discussion on planning in research. To begin with, we will start with some definitions on research, like the Random House Dictionary, a very general definition. It states that research is a systematic inquiry into a subject in order to discover or revise facts, theories, etc. So, friends, you see that there is a stress on systematic inquiry, and it ultimately results into discovering or revising facts, theories, etc. Another definition from the Encyclopedia of Social Sciences. It says that research is manipulation of things, concepts, or symbols for the purpose of generalization to extend, correct, or verify knowledge, whether that knowledge aids in the construction of a theory or in practice of an art. So, this definition stresses on manipulation of things. It also says that once you manipulate, it results into generalizing or extending knowledge. And finally, the generalization helps in the construction of a theory. So, therefore, two different definitions stressing two different aspects. Let us take another definition, the Webster's Third International Dictionary of the English Language. A very exhaustive definition. It says that research is a studious inquiry or examination, especially critical and exhaustive investigation or experimentation, having for its aim the discovery of new facts and their correct interpretation, the revision of accepted conclusions, theories, or laws in the light of newly discovered facts or practical applications of new or revised conclusions, theories, or laws. You see again in this particular definition there is that stress on critical and exhaustive investigation, and ultimately the common things that ultimately there is the purpose of research is revision or new knowledge coming out of it. So, the stress is on critical and exhaustive investigation. We will take up two more definitions. We have taken up different definitions because they are pointing out towards some very specific aspects of research. Best and Khan, it says that research is systematic and objective analysis. So, you find that it says systematic and objective, which was not there in the earlier definitions, and recording of controlled observations. This is another new thing that has come up in this definition that may lead to the development of generalization. It was also there in earlier definitions. Principles or theories resulting in prediction and possibly ultimate control of events. And the final one by Busha and Harter, it says that research is a systematic quest for knowledge that is characterized by disciplined inquiry. So, the systematic quest and disciplined inquiry is there, that is new in these definition, and it also says it is efficient and effective approach to expand knowledge in the conduct of special, planned and structured investigations. So, we have given different definitions just to find out the different critical aspects that are there in research, and we can summarize these definitions by stating that research is a systematic inquiry. It involves exhaustive and critical investigation. It also has controlled observation, and what you collect you ultimately analyze it objectively, and all these finally result into interpreting, verifying, critically investigating knowledge to generalize into principles and theories. So, this knowledge that we arrive at, it has to be generalized into different conditions, different situations. So, this is how we define research. We have delved into different definitions. We have also tried to summarize research because this will really help us into conducting research, starting from finding a topic to ultimately formulating the topic and problem. Now, let us go into the characteristics of research. We have defined research. Now, we also try to see what are the different characteristics of research. Research is an intellectual activity of the highest order. It involves exhaustive and critical investigation. The purpose of research is to discover new facts, new data, and also to interpret them. And finally, once we have discovered new data and facts, we also report these in a systematic and structured way. So friends, you would see that we have quite often used these words systematic, structuring, comprehensive, exhaustive. So these all characterize research. You tend to see what all has already been done. You see that you are not missing anything. We all know that the purpose of research is to develop and build new knowledge, to expand the frontiers of knowledge. Ultimately, it helps in the development of the society. It results into socio-economic and cultural development of the society. It also helps in improving the status of society, improving the material well-being of society. So this all are can be stated as the purpose of research. Now let us go into the process of research. You know, research begins with having a problem in mind. In fact, the problem arises due to the work that we are doing. We find that there are certain gaps that need to be looked into. There are certain areas that need to be improved upon. We have knowledge, we have theories, but while working on those theories, while working in that mass of knowledge, we find that there are certain areas where we need to improve, and we tend to identify hypotheses amongst those variables, and hypotheses are stated as relationship among those variables. And these hypotheses come from the literature that is there, the knowledge that is there. Once we have stated these hypotheses, we also tend to formulate objectives for our research. There are certain research questions in our mind, and based on all these, we go to the field to collect data. The data collection is done, but for that also we plan, and planning is how to collect data, where from to collect data, what sort of data is to be collected, when is it to be collected. We tend to plan our tools and techniques for data collection, and once this is done, we finally organize that data. We tend to see the relationships among the different variables that are there, and to test the hypothesis, we conduct statistical tests, appropriate statistical tests. And what we get into after all this, we tend to identify the relationships, we tend to see that, we tend to present that as results. We corroborate our findings into what has already been done. We tend to see what others have achieved out of such type of studies, and we try to correlate our results with what the others have done. So this is how we generalize our findings, and these may help us to add to the already existing theory of knowledge. So this is the process of research that exists. Now to really begin research, the first thing that comes to the mind of a researcher is how to find a topic that is relevant for research, how to arrive at a topic for research. The first problem is that arriving at the topic itself is difficult, and when we tend to think of a topic, The other problem that comes to our mind is whether this topic is really worth researching. Can this topic be a topic for research or not? How to really decide whether a topic is worth researching? Can we do research on this or not? There are certain criteria that we can keep in mind. To begin with, the first and foremost, most important of all is that that area should be of interest to the researcher. One should not think of an area of research that is current, that is of much interest to others, but then the researcher has no interest in it. It should be from the researcher's point of view, that one, if one is interested in that, that is the most important criteria, that it leads to one in that area of research. Then the next is that once you think of an area, you tend to zero down on a topic. Now, whether this topic is worth researching or not, again, it depends on whether it really demands, whether it really results into investigative studies or not, whether this topic will result into some promising useful results or not. Once one is sure about that, then one has to decide about the relevance of the topic, whether the topic is relevant for research or not, whether it is current or not, whether it really demands research. Because how do you say whether it demands research or not? It demands research because the literature is so that it is lacking in that area. The practice that is based on that area is now outdated. There are problems that the profession is facing, particularly when you talk of library information science. You are working in libraries, you find there is a problem area. You would like to research in that area and come up with new solutions, particularly in action research, similarly in applied research. So relevance is very important. Now the other point is whether the topic is viable or not. Viability of the topic is very important. Whether you would be able to conduct research in that area or not, whether your conditions allow that to be done or not, whether your expertise allows you to do such a research or not, whether your resources allow you to do such a research or not. Resources means the time that is available with you, the manpower that is available with you, the financial resources that you have, the infrastructure that you have. So these are all very important areas that one needs to look into before one really thinks of a topic. So these are some very important areas that one has to look into when one thinks of researching a particular area. Another very important area is that one should not be duplicating research. If a research is already been done or it is underway, one should not think of researching in that area because it is unnecessary duplication of efforts. So these are all points that one needs to ponder over when one really thinks of a topic of research, an area of research. Generally, people find this problem that they are not able to be confident enough to say yes, they would research in that area. So if you see the definitions that we have seen of research, we have seen that there are certain characteristics, there are certain musts for research. Added to these points, one should be very sure, yes, this can be a topic for research. That how to really choose a topic for research? What are the sources to choose for? What are the tips that one can take help from while coming up with an area for research? I am very sure that many of you would have thought of doing research, many of you would be guiding research. I think these areas would really help you of thinking a topic. Added to what we have already discussed, that this should be an area of interest to you. Then what else? How do these topics really come up with in one's mind, or how do one really come up with these topics? I think it is from the area of one's work, one's experience in teaching, one's experience of working in a library information center, one's experience of handling information and serving information users, or handling information products and services, or also one's experience while researching a particular area. These are all that really helps one to come up with a topic for research. Besides that, while we survey literature, particularly the literature that is primary literature, literature of research, that gives us enough indication what are the recent topics that are being studied. You may come up with a topic in a different context, or an offshoot of that topic on which one is researching, or an aspect of that topic which one has not taken up. So, literature is a very big source of coming up with a area of research. Another area that really helps us to come up with a topic for research is our discussion with our professional colleagues. While discussing areas, our discussions help us to come up with an area that can be researched. Our attending professional meetings, professional conferences, seminars, workshops. Knowledge doesn't come up in vacuum. It is always while we are contemplating, while we are reading, while we are critically analyzing, we are thinking, we are talking to others. So that all really helps us to come up with an area for research. Now, we have thought of a topic, we have also formalized that topic. Now, what next? Next is that we expand on what we have thought of, and for that we need to undertake a review of literature. What has already been done? Up till now, we have been discussing, we have been consulting literature, but this is a formal, conscious attempt to review literature. While we are researching, literature review is done at different stages. In fact, review of literature starts with prior to our doing research, and it goes on while we formulate our research, while we conduct our research, and while we interpret our research. So, review of literature goes till the end. In the beginning, when we do review of literature, it helps us to understand the subject, understand the ramifications of the subject, understand the different relationships among the different facets and sub-facets of the subject. While doing so, we come up with certain keywords, and using these keywords, we scan different types of resources. If the topic is too new or it is too current, we may even need to consult some background sources of information. It may also be that the topic involves some interdisciplinary areas. For that particularly, we may have to consult some secondary sources also. But remember that while we are reviewing literature, we have to be very exhaustive, we have to be very comprehensive, but at the same time we have to be precise also, that we should scan literature that is precisely with what we want. Within that precision, we have to be exhaustive and comprehensive also, and that is why we have to be very clear about the different components, subcomponents, facets, subfacets, their interrelationships, and amongst all those facets and subfacets, and we may do it chronologically. Time is very important. We may start with the most current and we may go back in time. But then how to decide to what extent we have to go back? At times there are certain classics that might be very old, we may have to include them in review of literature. The pedestrian works we may leave out if we go back in time. But then we have to decide a limit of time that depends on the subject also that we are considering. So, this review of literature helps us into further signifying the problem that we are going to People think of a topic, people think of a domain, they even plan their research, but often they miss the problem that they are to research. Generally, it is seen that we are more concerned about description of things. we are not able to really formulate a problem. Problem is the most important part of a research. Now generally there are two ways in which a topic is selected. Either it is very specific or it is broad. Generally there is a view that topic should be very specific. It should also denote the scope of your study. There is another viewpoint that it has to be broad. Those who tend to keep their topic broad, they are not very sure and certain to what extent they are going to research the topic, therefore they keep it broad. And those who are very clear about the problem, about the extent of problem that they are intending to study, they tend to keep the topic specific. Generally in sciences, the topic is kept very specific. Library and information science is also close to that. That is why they also tend to keep the topic specific. At times, in case of historical research, the topic is kept a little broader. So it depends what sort of topic that you are going to research. You have to define the scope of your study, and the scope is what you intend to do, what you do not intend to do. And while you discuss about the scope of your topic, you may have to discuss the scope from the point of view of subject. You tend to limit your research as far as subject is concerned. You have to be very specifically stating the scope as far as subject is concerned, the scope as far as geographical area is concerned, the time that is concerned, even the population, and finally the sample also. So these are all the different facets that you identify as scope and you state while you plan your study, while you plan your synopsis. Now after that, research questions that you have in mind. These are the questions to which you intend to find answers. These are the questions that you intend to search for, looking for answers. So you state them as questions, very clear questions, and you finally, when you end your research, you should have been able to find answers to these questions. So these are stated there. Your objectives follow from the research questions. You state them as very clear, unambiguous, precise statements, short, step by step, that are achievable. It is very important. Most of the time it has been seen that when people state objectives, their objectives are lacking in these characteristics that are there of objectives. You should not have too many objectives or too less. At times they state objectives as a purpose, as a mission, but then objectives should be achievable. Hypothesis. At times many research, particularly descriptive research, exploratory research, they do not have hypothesis. So not all researches have hypothesis, but if your research has hypothesis, you should identify the variables. These variables are the independent variables, dependent variables, causal variables. You should identify these variables in terms of the characteristics. You should also try to identify the relationships, but these do not come in the air. It is based on theory, the knowledge that already exists, plus your intuition, and you state these hypotheses as null hypothesis by saying that there is no relationship, or the other option is alternate hypothesis. And this is how you further tend to clarify your research, that this is what you intend to find. And once you have decided on all these things, you have to decide on the methodology also. What methodology would you choose for your research? So these are all very important when you are planning your research. But now how to decide the methodology? There are different methodologies in research. There are different methods, tools and techniques for research. So while you are planning your methodology, all these, which one we should opt for, it depends on the problem that you are studying. It also depends on the objectives that you have to achieve, the hypothesis that you have to achieve, the resources that you have, resources in terms of time, in terms of finances and in terms of manpower. As we said that while you think of your scope, you also have to think of your population. You have to think of the characteristics of the population, and in terms of the resources that are available with you, you have to think of the sample also, whether you would go for a probability sample or non-probability sample. You have to plan all these things on the basis of your resources, your facility. We have not done research, we are just planning, but we have to think of the results also. We have also to think of areas that we would not be covering. These are stated as limitations. Generally, people at times are not able to really think of limitations, but then what you are expected to really study while you formulate a problem, while you formulate a scope and all other things, and out of that what you will not be able to really do, you state them as limitations. And finally, once all these things are decided, you prepare a research proposal or a synopsis that you say. So, this includes all that we have discussed till now. It is a formal document that includes all these aspects, beginning with the introduction, statement of the problem, your review of literature. Review of literature is very important because it is the review of literature that gives a status of what has been done in the area that you intend to research. What is it that has not been done? What are the gaps that exist that you intend to fill? What is it that you are going to come up new with? What is it that you are going to critically analyze? So, this all comes up with the review of literature, presented thematically, topically, chronologically, and then it follows with the objectives, scope, research questions or hypothesis. At times you may have both, generally you have one. Then your research methodology. You also come up with your tentative chapterization. See, you have not begun your research and you are thinking of your chapterization also. Such is the importance of planning in research. And finally, the references that you have come up with. So, this is how you plan your research. A well planned research means you have done half your work, and all this takes time. It is not that it is a matter of a few days or hours. It takes time and you prepare for it, you do it in a well planned manner. As I said, it means half of your work is done. So, this is how you plan your research before you really begin with it. We will continue with more aspects of research in our further discussions. Thank you all.